Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Redefining Professional Growth in a Reimagined Work World. My name is Natalie Varanya, and I am the Marketing Specialist here at TalentMap, and I will be your webinar host today. I'm here with David Ang, TalentMap Senior Consultant in Engagement, and David is a seasoned market research professional and management consultant. David brings over 25 years of consulting experience to help TalentMap's clients better understand their workforce and improve employee engagement. Over the years, David has worked with a range of clients from the private sector to nonprofit and government organizations. His extensive research and consulting background has enriched his abilities in building effective client survey strategies, questionnaire design, focus group and workshop facilitation, and executive presentations. So welcome, David. So for today's agenda, once I'm done with the formal introductions, David will start us off with a quick summary of professional growth in relation to employee engagement and discuss what today's employees expect from their organization. After that, he'll dive into the solutions and how HR professionals and leaders can address this challenge. We will also reserve the last 20 minutes for some Q&A. And for the Q&A, you can submit your question at any point during the webinar using the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. I will keep a list of questions as they come in for the end of the presentation. If we are unable to respond to your question due to time limitations, I will be sure to follow up by email. I also wanted to mention that this webinar is being recorded. The recording and slide deck will be posted on the website early next week, and an email notification will be sent to all registrants once they're available. So for those who are not familiar with TalentMap, I wanted to give a quick overview of who we are and what we do. TalentMap is a trusted advisor in employee engagement and surveying. We have been in business for over 18 years, and in those years, we have conducted more than 7,000 employee engagement survey projects. Each year, we survey over 1 million employees across more than 500 organizations. At TalentMap, we have one focus, and that's to partner with organizations to improve their workplaces. So we do this using three core elements. First, we ensure you ask the right questions when launching a full employee engagement survey or a pulse survey, entry-exit survey, and even 360 surveys. Secondly, we uncover valuable employee insights by diving deep into the data and really analyze the results for you. And lastly, what makes TalentMap truly unique among our sea of competitors is that we stick it out and make sure that you act on your survey results to make real change in your workforce through effective action planning and additional post-survey consulting services. As you can see from this sample, we've worked with a number of clients across North America in a number of sectors. With our years of experience, we have established comprehensive industry benchmarks to put our clients' survey results in the context of their competitive marketplace. So now that you know a little bit more about TalentMap, we'll get started. So over to you, David.
Thanks, Natalie. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever you're located. I see from our attendee list that we do have folks from not only North America, but across the globe. So that's fantastic. So welcome. So I'm going to talk about the professional growth challenge and what it means both to you as an employer as well as employees and why that matters. So before we get into the details, I think we need a common understanding of, what are we talking about in terms of professional growth? So I think the picture speaks 1,000 words, and I know it's a cliche, but professional growth has traditionally been viewed as the upward movement in an organization, starting out often at the bottom, working up to a supervisor, onto a manager, to director, vice president, so on and so forth. That is the old model of professional growth. It's what a lot of employees, what a lot of even employers view as professional growth. But that's changed. It's changed quite dramatically, and that evolution started actually quite a long time ago as probably most of you are aware of. It really started to evolve in the 1990s, and today's organizations, today's workforce really doesn't reflect that picture very accurately anymore, for the most part. In some organizations, for example, in government, large government departments, and some very large corporations, that model does hold to some degree, but by and large, things have evolved quite dramatically. So what does this mean? Well, really what it means is the lifelong career contract, it's dead. It's not just dead, it's been long dead, if truth be told. So what is the lifelong career contract? In my parents' generation, you would expect to have, finished high school, finished university, whatever your education is, start a job, and you would typically expect to be at that organization or that company, if not your whole career, for most of your career. You progress through the ranks from top to bottom to top, with commensurate increases in pay and responsibility, et cetera. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. In today's world, most people have many careers within their career. I'm sure you know that. I'm sure you've seen that with your own teams and your own employees. So what's changed? Well, a lot's changed. There has been a need to cut costs. Globalization in the past 20, 30 years has really put pressures on organizations and companies to be more efficient. So layoffs happen rather than doing things internally. Often external sources or outsourcing is the way to go in terms of things from training to bringing in specific expertise and staff. So that old paradigm is no longer in effect. So this is just an interesting visualization of that. The old careers are now dead and buried, and it was good while it lasted, but it's now time to move on. So how does professional growth fit into all of this? Well, we look at various dimensions of engagement. What makes an employee engaged in an organization? It's one of the core. It is the core thing that we do at TalentMap, and as Natalie said, we do literally thousands of employee engagement surveys each year. We have millions of respondents to various research studies. And so when we run the data and we look at the various dimensions, and there's 12 of them here in the list, and these dimensions are the ones that have the biggest influence and impact on overall engagement in the organization, we see very clearly that professional growth is the key driver of all these things. So when you look at that list, you'll see different dimensions that make sense. Compensation, everybody wants to be paid fairly, work-life balance, innovation, vision, etc. But of all these things, professional growth is the number one dimension in terms of overall engagement with the organization. If you look to the chart on the right, what that shows is the level of impact or the level of influence or importance of each of these dimensions on overall engagement. And think of it as a pie. Think of it as an apple pie. So just over a fifth of that pie is professional growth. And it drops far down to things like information and communication, which only represents 2% of the importance towards overall engagement. So that's why professional engagement is very, very important. And the natural question is, okay, so what? It's important, but so what? Well, the so what to that is there are actual business and organizational benefits to having highly engaged organizations. Lower absenteeism, higher productivity, better retention rates. All these things are of huge benefit to the organization, to you as an employer. So you do want to focus on driving engagement in your organization. Having a highly engaged organization and professional growth will have the biggest impact on achieving that high level of engagement in the organization. What I'm showing you here is a typical profile of how clients, how organizations, and this is an actual client example from one of our many studies, how professional growth is viewed and rated by employees in terms of engagement. So there are 5 dimensions of professional growth, and these have been developed carefully, empirically, and through other research. And these 5 dimensions roll up into the overall perception around overall professional growth in an organization. So work is challenging. Everybody wants to have challenging work. You don't want to be just be on a widget line for the rest of your life. So work challenge is important. Opportunity to do your best every day. Continuous learning and growth opportunities. I think that's a key one. Career aspirations can be achieved. So that's an aspirational thing. And making a positive impact at work. And what you see here, the green represents the percentage of employees that view these different dimensions of professional growth positively or favorably. The orange is not; they're unfavorable, and the blue are those that are neutral. They're on the fence. They're not favorable. They're not unfavorable towards these things. And the 2 highlighted bars there, continuous opportunities to learn and grow professionally and career aspirations can be achieved at the organization. You can see that in this example, and it's a true example, the percent favorable are under half. Less than 1 in 2 employees feel this way. This is quite representative of most organizations. That the challenge around professional growth often relate to employees not feeling that they have the opportunity to progress within the organization. And this happens more so and quite frequently in smaller organizations and flat or horizontal organizations. And the challenge is organizations tend to be flattening or going to matrix structures, for a variety of very good business reasons, but that takes a toll on employee aspirations. The other key metric around this is around learning and growth opportunities within the organization. And you can see at 47 and 48, this organization is well below benchmark. But even at benchmark, and that benchmark is based on the millions of respondents that we have in our database that Natalie mentioned, it's still only in the 50-odd% in terms of career aspirations. So this is a real challenge, both for organizations, because what do you do? Especially if you're a smaller or flat organization, there's only so many steps that employees can move upwards in that vertical climb that we talked about earlier. So that's a challenge that we need to look at, and it's something I'm going to talk to as we go through this. So what does it mean? These challenges aren't new. You've probably noticed them in your own organizations over the past several years. And the influx of or changing demographic of the workforce in terms of millennials coming into the workforce in the past several years. Post-baby boom, the post-baby boom generation, the millennials represent the largest new segment into the workforce in a long time. So these are challenges that you as employers have to face, because when you look at this, millennials behave very differently and have very different expectations from previous generations. And we can see just in this chart that each generation things become even more transient in terms of workforce. Part of it is their attitudes and experiences and expectations, but also part of it is driven by the social contract that's changed between employer and employee. So, I mean, if we just look at this very quickly, you can see that millennials by age 32 have on average gone through 4 jobs. 4 jobs, think about that, from the time that they finish university or high school to the age of 32. So in about 10 to 12 years, the average millennial has had 4 jobs. If you look at Gen Xers and Gen Ys, the average tenure of a Gen Xer in their first 12 years of their career is only 3.4 years. Generation Y are 22% more likely to change jobs than Gen Xers. So there's a lot of employee turnover. Again, just solidifying that position or statement that I talked about earlier on, that the lifelong job, or even the one person being in a job for 30 years, that's pretty much dead and gone. And as the newer generations come into the workforce, you can see more and more of this. So we have to learn ways to work within this new construct. The quote there, I think, just summarizes what I've been saying. College degrees to slot you into a 40-year career. Now it's just an entry-level point to your first job. So the long-term position is gone. So why do people leave? There's lots of research out there. This is an infographic from Bamboo HR, and it shows very clearly that career advancement is the main reason people leave jobs. It's not often misconstrued. People talk about, I'm going to get more pay, more compensation, or I don't like my manager. Those are reasons, but they tend to be secondary reasons. When people think they're at a dead end in terms of their career, that's when they actively start looking for other opportunities. And this is very consistent with the research that we do at TalentMap from exit surveys and other research, that it is career advancement being the main factor in the decision to leave. So the challenge, how do we provide ample growth opportunities to employees who not only expect more, but they demand more? And we're seeing that in the movement. The high levels of movement between jobs, especially with the younger generations and especially with millennials. So what can we do? Well, what we shouldn't do is go back to the old model. We can see that demand exceeds supply. So what does that mean? Because we've gone to flatter, more horizontal or matrix organizations, there are fewer and fewer positions if you're looking at it in terms of a step ladder climb. Typically, out of every 5 employees, what we've found is there's 1 star performer, 3 that are very good, solid performers, and 1 perhaps that is more challenging. That's sort of a typical, if you will, curve of employee competency. Well, if there's only 1 position available for a promotion, what happens to those 3 high performers? It's a challenge. And that's where, when we look back at that data that I was showing you, that's why it's only at 50% or less that are favorable in terms of their career aspirations. It's because those 3 out of 5 that are high performers and know they're high performers and are told they're high performers don't see any where to go within the organization. And the old model rewarded certain behaviors which aren't necessarily conducive to success in an organization in today's day and age. Innovation, entrepreneurial behavior, these are tenets of successful organizations in today's economy, and the old model did not reward that. So what do employees expect, and what do they want in terms of professional growth opportunities? So the first thing to say, before we even look at this list, and you can read this, is I've been doing lots of focus groups with lots of employees in the past few months, and most employees, many employees, especially the younger ones, first of all, know and acknowledge that the traditional career path doesn't exist anymore. Yes, maybe they are a little bit frustrated by that because generationally that's what they've seen and potentially very early on may have expected it, but rationally they know that that boat has left the port. So what do they want? What do they expect? They have a broader view of professional growth. Many employees, especially younger employees, millennials, and even some Gen Xers, understand that professional growth is really about bettering themselves. It's about long-term employability. So, no, I may not be able to get that promotion to director because there's only one director in the organization or the department, but I can still grow professionally by increasing my competencies, my skill sets, my experience that will allow me to be more marketable. That's really what it comes down to. Because most recognize they're not going to be at the organization, even if they love the organization and have a good working relationship, professional relationship, and even personal relationships with the people that that they go to the office with every day. Most know that at some point they will be leaving. That's the nature of today's job market. 3 to 4 careers within a career. So if you have that perspective, and most employees do, again, especially younger employees have that perspective, they want to be able to leave the organization at some point, whenever that is, with more than they came in with. And so how do they do that? And what do they expect? Continuing education. You can't promote me, that's fine. Well, maybe it's not fine, but but at least you can continue to invest in me in terms of an employee to help me build that skill set, to help me build my competencies. Career development and counseling services. So they're looking for opportunities to go beyond what's within their narrow job description. So are there opportunities cross-functionally, for example, that will allow me to grow my skill set and provide that counseling service for me internally within the organization to help me realize other avenues of growth? Skills training. Often employers think skill training is all about hiring a trainer to do something, or sending people out on courses to universities or conferences or whatever that may be. And that's part of it, for sure. But again, in talking to employees over the past few months on this very issue, a lot of them are just looking for internal. Internal training can be just as useful, because they look at their colleagues, they look at other people in the organization who have vast knowledge, experience, have different things to offer, and they would like a piece of that. And setting up in-house training, coaching, mentoring programs, etc., are all ways that employees look to grow themselves and typically do appreciate and value. And despite all of those things, it is human nature to want to see or have the chance to be promoted and have that older school advancement in the organization. So we can't dismiss that completely out of hand, but we have to understand that those particular opportunities may be limited. The other thing is lateral movement within an organization. So maybe I don't get promoted to the next level, but I might be able to move to a different department that will challenge me and help me to continue to grow as well. So those are some of the things that employees have actually said to us in person about what they're looking for in terms of professional growth opportunities, especially in light of the fact that the traditional career progression is now limited. So how do we address professional growth, these challenges as an organization? And what are some of the things that we can do? So I put up 4 things, four actions that you might want to consider and research and literature has shown to have a very positive impact on professional growth and perceptions around professional growth. If you had the chance to listen into a similar webinar on professional growth by my colleague Norm a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2016, he would have talked about this in a lot of detail. So I'm going to cover some of the same ground here, but perhaps not break it down in as much detail as Norm did. But I would encourage you, if you'd like a lot more detail in some of these areas, his webinar is on our website, and I'd encourage you to go take a look at it, and you can access his thoughts and his interpretation on this as well. So let's start with career management and why this is important to professional growth. So really, career management is replacing or has replaced performance management within a lot of organizations, and it certainly has a bigger impact on engagement than the old performance management models. So career management is really about two things. One, it's forward-looking as opposed to rear-view looking for performance management. And secondly, and in my view, probably more importantly, is career management empowers the employee. So rather than the old model, which performance management was built on, which puts the onus on the manager to direct the employee in terms of performance, competencies, where you should be going, what you should be doing, and what you should be striving to achieve, career management places that onus on the employee. So what that does is it creates an environment where the employee is motivated to succeed, because ultimately it's their goals and it's their ambitions that are being evaluated and structured and moved along within the organization. So what is career management? First of all, it's aspirational. It's not rear view looking. We're not sitting down with the employee and saying, okay, in the past 12 months, this is what you were supposed to do, and this is how you did it, and this is your rating of, typical scale, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 4 out of 5, whatever that number is, which often, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, employees get their backs up when they see, when their whole year and their whole performance is narrowed down to a number, 3 out of 5. I mean, I've heard this several times that, that's not reflective of my performance. Everybody gets a 3 out of 5, and I was a star performer. Well, career management takes that away. It just takes that whole judgmental perspective of the employee out of the equation. What it does is it focuses on the employee's strengths. Ultimately, if you boil it down, you sit down with your employees and you find out it's about engaging with them about what it is they want to achieve for themselves, and getting them to articulate and come up with a plan for achieving their goals within the organization. And your role as an organization, as an HR manager or as a direct line manager, is to support the employee achieve those objectives, provide the resourcing, and whatever else is needed to help them achieve that. It leads to more of an entrepreneurial spirit, more innovation, etc. And employees buy into it a lot more. They're a lot more engaged, and they take ownership of their career a lot more than being told. The analogy would be they're driving the bus as opposed to being the passenger in the bus, and it does drive engagement quite significantly. So think about, if you don't already have it, implementing a career management model as opposed to, and I'm not saying to get rid of the performance management programs that you have, but think about implementing a career management program as well. One of the key differences as well is a career management program is and should be conducted much more frequently than a performance management, and it shouldn't be about paperwork and check marks and filling in boxes. it should be more about conversation and engaging, having a discussion with the employee. We would suggest, if not monthly, a monthly sit-down meeting, maybe a quarterly, but definitely more than the typical once a year performance management model. Training and education. I think this is a pretty obvious one, and really the key message here is don't view learning and development and training and education as an expense, but view it as an investment in your employees. The change in the workforce in industry where, and we've talked about this, that people leave jobs for whatever reason, go back to 3 to 4 careers within the career. So many organizations have the view of, why would I want to spend money and invest in employees if I know they're going to leave? All I'm doing is training them to go work for somebody else. And that's a natural, from a pure cost perspective, that's a natural reaction. However, if you view that they're going to probably leave anyway for whatever reason, the reason to invest in training and education is there's a few of them. One of them is that you will get high productivity, more competent employees, and importantly, more engaged employees. And if you go back to what I pointed out earlier on, more highly engaged employees are less likely to leave. So what you're actually doing by investing in your employees in training and education is you're mitigating the probability of them leaving the organization. From our databases and from our research, we actually track, and we have empirical evidence on this, that the probability of leaving for an engaged employee is 87% lower than it is for a disengaged employee. And we know that professional growth is one of the key drivers of engagement. So if you can drive their level of satisfaction with professional growth within the organization, and access to training and education is a key part of that, you drive down the chance of them leaving. So view it as an investment, not as a cost. So what does that mean? Training should be a priority at all levels of the organization. And what that means is training and education opportunities should be available not only to, for example, frontline staff that are dealing with customers or clients, back office staff, those that you may not think of immediately in terms of sending for training should also be considered. It shouldn't be, in today's work environment, limited to a few select employees. The other thing that happens when it is, the other employees notice this, and it drives down engagement because they view themselves as second-class citizens. And we've heard this again in focus groups and discussions with employees, that why is it one group gets all the training and we get nothing? So you have to make it a priority at all levels. The second point here, the second bullet, is really the one that I think is key. You need to understand what your employees need. Too many organizations create training programs or curriculum, or however you structure it, that is determined solely by the organization without an understanding of what the employee actually wants or needs for their career. So a common thing that we hear is, I want to do this type of training. It's denied because it's outside of my job description. So if my narrow job description says I do A, B, and C, I'm not allowed to get training on D. And what about if D is where I want to go within the organization, because that's where I see growth in terms of opportunity, career opportunity? Think back. Majority of employees have a problem with career aspiration within an organization. that's a metric. That's a hard fact based on 1 million plus employees who filled in surveys for us. So career aspiration may take you outside of your narrow job description within the organization, but you're denied training because it doesn't fit. I've personally heard this so many times from different employees. So you need to understand what it is your employees want and need, and not box them in. So flexibility and understanding is important. And then you need to create a culture of accountability. And so what does that mean? That means that managers shouldn't be denying employees the chance to take their training and do their professional development courses because they're too busy. All that does is it deprioritizes the importance of training. And as we move further and further and deeper into a knowledge-based economy, training, education, competency development becomes more important, not less important. And if managers, line managers, for example, supervisors, deny employees the chance to take that training, that again hurts professional growth and engagement in the organization. So a culture of accountability from the top down to say that training is a priority is important. And as I said, it leads to higher job employee satisfaction, lower turnover, and also training and education helps keep your employees up to date with the latest technologies, methodologies, whatever it is you focus on. It keeps them current, and that's good for you as an organization because it makes sure that organizationally you're at the cutting edge, but it's also good for the employee because, as I mentioned, one of the things that employees look for today is building up their own competencies so that their long-term marketability is good, and this helps them do that. Networking is important. In fact, it's vital. And why is it vital? There are many reasons and many benefits to networking. It's not always the easiest thing to do, and it doesn't often come naturally to a lot of employees, but it's something that you as an organization should be encouraging employees to do. And there's many reasons to do that, and there's summarized into 10. So it helps people, it helps others. And that doesn't necessarily sound like a good, something that you would focus on from a business perspective. But helping others means, if you take it from a purely selfish perspective, if you help someone else out in your network, there's a quid pro quo that happens where when you need something or need some assistance, you're going to get the help that you need and the advice. And it's a path for professional success moving forward. Helps you to exchange ideas. So again, it keeps you current, keeps you up to date with what's going on in the world. One of the big ones, visibility. Visibility helps to improve marketability, helps to improve your personal brand, but it also helps improve the organization's brand to know that this person represents your organization in different form. Opens new doors and new opportunities, new people. So that's important. It allows you to share your opinions and express your opinions in ways that perhaps start discussions and conversations around different issues in the industry, and also give and get constructive feedback. It expands your support network. So perhaps you're going through something at work, you needed some best practices and so on. You can receive and share information from that perspective. It is a predictor of promotion. Let's face it, if you're highly visible, you're active in the network, and you're well received, recognized, etc., those in powers of position within the company are more likely to recognize you and promote you, which, although not the key thing anymore is talked about in terms of promotion, it's still important. So we don't want to diminish that completely. for those that are looking to boost self-esteem, networking is a great way to do that, because people do ask your opinions in a network like LinkedIn. You share your opinions, and it's nice. It's nice to be asked what do you think about this. It's a resource. You can talk to other professionals. You can resolve issues. You can tap into other people's knowledge. And finally, it provides a positive influence. A network, I think we're all familiar with the Facebook thumbs up option, but really, for example, on LinkedIn, people give you recommendations. They'll provide you public support in terms of what you're doing and so on. So there's a lot of good reasons to promote an active network, both from an organization as well as an employee perspective, and that helps people in their professional growth. Along the lines of networking, as an organization, one of the things that you can do is build an alumni network. This has been done very successfully with management consulting companies, which is the background I came from. I'm a member of my former alumni network. There's a lot of very good reasons for both the organization and the employee to want to participate in an alumni network. So from the organization's perspective, if you were to set up an alumni network, it's a way to recruit employees back. Employees leave, very good employees leave, maybe people that you don't want to see leave for whatever reason. But if the break was done on good terms, there's a very good chance that they'll come back if the right opportunities available. Our research shows that 8 out of 10 employees would consider returning to their old organization. An alumni network lets you keep in touch and maintain that relationship with your former employees. You know how to reach them, for example, if the right opportunity comes up and you want them back. You don't have to go looking for their personal address to try to find them. You know how to find them. Something that the management consulting companies have done incredibly successfully with former employees through the alumni network is generating revenue. A lot of their consultants leave and go to the client side, and essentially become their new clients. So again, a very good organizational benefit. From the alumni perspective, from those that leave and maintain that relationship, it allows you to continue to build your network, and we talked about the importance of networks. It allows them to maintain professional contacts and friendships. I mean, let's be honest, most of us develop very good long-term relationships with our colleagues, many of our colleagues, if you've been there for several years. And when you leave, you don't just necessarily drop all contact. So this allows you a way to maintain those relationships. And ongoing affiliation with the personal brand. So if you had been working for a well-known brand, a big brand, a well-respected brand with a great reputation, even though you've left the organization, it's nice to retain that affiliation, to say, I used to work for company X or organization Y. There's a pride factor that goes with that. And it also builds from an organization perspective, the brand of that company. So there's lots of good benefits to building an alumni network. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of another way to enhance professional growth, and again, this one is a little bit out there, maybe not as well known as some of the others. Could be viewed a little bit as a controversial approach, but it's something that's worked very well in Silicon Valley to great success. So it's something called a tour of duty, and it's how that differs from everything else is that it takes the shorter term relationship between employer and employee to a new level, if you want to put it that way. So everybody goes into this, employer and employee, knowing that this is a shorter term relationship. typically 3 to 5 years or 2 to 5 years, depending. And reciprocity is the key. So both parties, employer and employee, go into this with the view that we're going to do our best for each other to add value. I'm going to do my best as an employee to add value to you, the organization, and the organization will do the best to add value to the employee. And you work towards a common goal. And if at the end of that period, that 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you've achieved what was agreed on, then you renew the contract, you renew the relationship. So really what it does is it's all about allowing the employee to achieve what they want to achieve, because it's the negotiation up front. This is what I want to focus on while working for your organization, and this is what I'm going to achieve. And the organization agrees to that and says, okay, fine, and we're going to support you and provide you with everything that you need to achieve that. And it's really both sides working out of self-interest to achieve a certain goal. And if it's successful at the end of the 2 to 4 or 5 years, then you renew it and you move on, and you reestablish what are the next set of goals that we're working towards. A good example of how this worked is LinkedIn. That when they started, there was a 4-year tour of duty with a 2-year with a touch point in 2 years to see how things are going, and if the employee moved the needle in the 4 years that they were there and advanced the interests of the company and themselves, then they signed up for another tour of duty. Very effective. It's been very well received in the tech sector, particularly in Silicon Valley. But it may not fit for every organization, but there is a role for this in some organizations where it really drives employee engagement, because again, it empowers the employee, and it's reflective of the new paradigm of the long single career vertical movement being dead and buried. So I'll wrap it up on that note, and I will pass it back to Natalie for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. That was a lot of valuable information, I think, for our listeners. So right now, we'll take a couple minutes for everyone on the line to submit their questions. If you haven't submitted one, you can feel free to do so now while more questions come in. I do have a couple of things to mention. So we've been working very hard here at TalentMap to provide additional resources for our clients and our followers. We regularly post new articles on our blog each week that provide quick tips, some tricks, and a look at industry trends, as well as some thought leadership pieces to keep you all in the loop. We've also recently built a new resource library where you can find more in-depth content pieces that includes downloadable how-to guides, some checklists, and info sheets to help guide your employee engagement initiatives. As for TalentMap's upcoming events and learning sessions, the TalentMap team will be on site at the upcoming OMAA Spring Workshops in Niagara Fall this May, as well as the SHRM Annual Conference in Chicago in June. If you're attending either of those events, we'd love to meet you, so feel free to send us an email. Our contact information will be on the last slide, or stop by our booth. We also have 2 upcoming webinars in May. One is on employee engagement and the importance of recognition, and the second will be on reducing presenteeism and absenteeism in the workplace. So the dates and details will be announced in the next few days, so please keep an eye out for that. And then one final note for me, we recently published Employee Engagement and Action Planning for Dummies. If you haven't ordered your copy yet, you can go to our website at www.talentmap.com/dummies. The book is free, but there is a shipping charge. But since you've all attended today's webinar, you can waive the shipping cost by using the promo code TAKEACTION, which is on the screen. And that is all of the announcements I have for you today. So we'll jump into questions at this time. We have time for a few. So we'll start off with a question that came early on from Kyle. This is a bit more of a clarification question, David. So when we were speaking about the different dimensions to professional growth, you mentioned making a positive impact. And Kyle just wanted to know if this refers to a positive impact on society or a positive impact on the business or something else.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think when we talk about the positive impact, if you recall, I had mentioned that it's important to understand the need of the employee. And so different employees will have a different perspective on this. So I think it's, if we're talking about volunteering, for example, that certainly may be a very important idea to some employees and not to others. So, I think you can't broad brush that one specifically in terms of community investment activities. In terms, does it play a role in professional development? It may for some, and it may not for others. And I think that's why when we talk about career management and having that, ongoing discussion with the employee, that's where we can uncover whether and what specific types of activities and goals they're looking to achieve. And that may be one of them for some people, but not for others.
Perfect.
Hope that answers the question, Colin.
Perfect. So second question comes from Najel. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So on the career management aspect, what do you do when the objectives set by the employee are not in line with the organizational goals and strategy? Do you have any recommendations for that, David?
Yeah, absolutely. And that will definitely rear its head at times. And I think transparency with the employee is important on this one. And that's perhaps something I should have talked about a little bit during the presentation, that what employees are looking for often is transparency and honesty from management. If what they are seeking to achieve in terms of their own professional growth objectives are not in line with the organization's vision, goals, strategies, that's okay. I think you just need to be forthright with the employees and let them know why whatever specific actions or goals that they're looking to achieve perhaps can't be met because it's not in line with the organizational goals. And again, it comes back to having that open discussion with the employees and seeing what else can be done, and perhaps redefining the objectives that the employees put out in a way that can be molded more closely to the organizational goals and strategy. But we wouldn't expect an organization to change its own goals and strategies because one or two employees, have different goals in life.
Okay, thank you. And then I think we have time for one more question. So this one is from Kyle again. So his question is, how do you see community investment activities and particularly skills-based volunteering as playing a role in professional development and employee engagement?
I think we already covered that one, Nat. Kyle's question. I see one other question come in from Oliver, and it says, in terms of employee engagement, does social media awareness sensitivity training need to get factored in? As managers team, we're co-creating protocols. So in terms of social media awareness and sensitivity training, I think it definitely does need to be factored in, not necessarily in terms of as engagement per se, but I think there are, and if we look at the media, every day there's issues in terms of how social media is used, and to what end. So I think it does need to be addressed organizationally in terms of what's appropriate, how do you use it, and so on. My colleague Norm had a really good point on social media, though, in terms of engagement, that especially with the younger generation, there's been a blending of social media, sort of the personal, how it's used, that there shouldn't be, for example, organizational ban on using Facebook, because from a networking perspective, and we talked about networking, it often extends well beyond the organization, that it could be through a friend of a friend that you hear about, an organization like TalentMap and get a referral and so on. So, I think there needs to be some guidelines as to how social media is used and to what purposes and what should be put out there, but it shouldn't be a carte blanche approach to saying yes or no to that. The other thing around social media that does impact engagement, and it drives down to sort of the team aspect, is if it's used in an inappropriate manner, it can definitely impact team spirit, team cooperation, how people view each other within the organization, et cetera. So, to Oliver's question, I would think that training on social media is important, and it has more of an indirect impact on engagement than I would say a direct impact.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think we're out of time.
Yep, that is all the time we have. Thank you, everyone who submitted your questions. Just a quick reminder that the recording of the webinar and slide deck will be posted on the website early next week, and we'll be sure to email you a notification to you directly once it's available. So that's it for our presentation. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time to present, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you'll join us again soon. Bye for now.